thanks for joining me. I'm here to talk about net zero homes in Baltimore City. Real briefly, I want to tell you a little bit about us. My name is Casey Ross. I'm an engineer who works for Lorax Partnerships. We're a green building certification consulting firm in Baltimore City, and I focus on energy modeling, energy analysis, and engineering related to those activities. So here we are talking about net zero homes in Baltimore City, and I want to talk to you about some lessons learned that we've found building actual net zero homes in our city. The big picture strategy for net zero, there's a lot of buzzwords that get bounced around about what that is, but the big picture is that we want to design for a low energy intensity and then use renewable power, and that generally means solar power on the roof to offset the rest, so that over the course of an entire year, the solar power generated is equal to or greater than the power that you take in from the utilities. So here we're going to look at two example net zero homes, one that has been built and occupied for a couple of years now, and the other that is in construction right now. So first of all, we're going to look at the one that's in construction. It's called the Sandtown Fulton Avenue row homes. It's a zero energy affordable housing row homes. There's several of them in the same block. It's a restoration project in Baltimore City on the west side. Lorax used energy modeling to determine the most cost-effective way to get to net zero, being able to make these affordable for both the developers and for the occupants that are going to live in there. And it was done in partnership with Bon Secours community programs over on that side of town. The other project that we're going to look at is 1620 Barclay Street. It's a single row home on the end of a block that is in the Barclay neighborhood. And it's also known as Tim's house. So this is Tim Barranco. He is the owner of the house and the owner of Lorax. One of the things that we do with energy modeling is look at big picture categories of energy. These are the 5 major categories where your energy is going to come in, both on natural gas and on electricity. And this is a pie chart showing typical distribution between that. So what we can see here, the biggest takeaways is that in a row home in our area, what we usually see is the majority of energy goes to heating and to running the appliances. That's our biggest takeaways, as opposed to things like trying to look at cooling, when you're air conditioning. Yeah, that's going to save you energy, but the biggest bang for your buck really getting to net zero is focusing on these 2 categories. Here's another way of looking at those categories in a column. And one of the biggest takeaways that we found for both of these projects was that air sealing is going to make the biggest difference. Because the heating category is so high, what we have found with row homes is just sealing up cracks around the windows and cracks at the doors are the most cost-effective way of moving the energy meter and the most just overall big picture way of moving the needle. So a $20 caulk gun is by far your best energy investment in these spaces. Air sealing for both projects, these are all pictures taken from Tim's house on Barclay Street, is absolutely critical. So in this project, we used aerosolized sealant to get into the cracks in the basement and in the walls and really seal that up tight. The problem is in the winter, the wind blows and it just brings that very cold air right into your house. And then you have to heat all that up. And that's really doing a number on your energy efficiency. For both of these projects, and this one's at Tim's place, we did blower door testing. So that is putting this mechanism that you see here into the doorway and pressurizing the house to accurately mathematically describe how much air is moving through the walls, through the cracks. So this project started out at an air infiltration rate of 6.4 air changes. It's about 1,600 CFM. And after sealing, we dropped it to 0.4 air changes. So more than an order of magnitude difference in that category. Most effective thing you can do is get a caulk gun. For the HVAC for this project, we used manual J calculations to right size the HVAC. Many times, contractors who don't know how to do manual J will give you a tonnage per square foot for your building, for your house. And really the right way to do it is through some small order of magnitude math to be able to make sure you get the exact right size unit. If you oversize, that is going to affect your efficiency because it'll be heating and cooling at bad operational points. They're not as efficient. On this project, we've also used heat recovery ventilation. So that's putting in this little silver box that takes in fresh air and exchanges heat with exhaust air that's moving out of the house. Generally, the exhaust air is coming from your toilet exhaust, just pulling out of the house. And that's able to recover some of that warmed up air instead of just dumping it right to outdoors. And we're using split system ductless heat pumps, which are probably the highest efficiency for a residential style application that we can have. The envelope is high efficiency, but it's not as crazy as you might think. It's fairly standard low E double paned windows. There's nothing out of control. For the Barclay Street application, there were some historic facade requirements that we need to do. So some of our reflective coatings need to be adjusted, but still within the realm of off-the-shelf kind of materials. And then the exterior insulation was 2-inch board with 3.5-inch bat, which is good insulation, but it's not crazy. Once you get up to about that level of insulation, anything more than that, you're getting diminishing returns on energy value. And so it's not worth it to hyper insulate. Not in our climate. For appliances, we installed induction cooking units to be able to use all electric and use that electricity efficiently. So induction units use magnetism on the pans to heat up instead of electric resistance. So they're faster reacting and they're less energy than like the old 1960s glowing red hot kind of electric stove that you might be used to. We use low flow plumbing fixtures to keep our domestic hot water load down, and then to drive that down even further, we used heat pump domestic hot water heater in the basement, which is pictured here, using both federal and BG&E rebates to have the installation cost for this heat pump hot water heater about on par with that of a very standard water heater. And then looking at the appliances to keep those appliance numbers down, we looked at what are the most efficient appliances out there. And the biggest user is your refrigerator. And the more complicated the refrigerator, the more ice cube makers, bells and whistles, double doors that you have in there that make your refrigerator nice and cozy. All of those are small cracks that get added into that refrigerator's envelope and cause heat loss. So this simple boxy refrigerator that we used was by far and away the most energy efficient one and the most economical, as it was, cheap and simple. And then lastly here, we put on the solar panels to take it from net zero ready to actually net zero. This was a standard 7.4 kilowatt array that was purchased online and installed by the contractors. It's a fairly packaged kind of deal that gets put into there, and it saves 8,400 kilowatt hours a year, which is about $1,500. And then that not only makes this row home net zero, but provides about 10,000 miles of vehicle charging per year. So it's a holistic kind of approach. The solar programs also were subject to some funding to help offset that cost. So the solar kit itself was about $17,500, and then current Maryland Solar Access programs have a $7,500 incentive right now. Here's the website if you want to check that out and get them all. It's still here. The federal ITC tax credit of more than $5,000 for solar clean energy is available. So adding these together makes the payback for solar really attractive. As you can see here in this graph, we start off with an installation cost down all the way past $15,000, but then putting in the state and federal credits plus the yearly money that you're saving every year, this solar installation pays off in less than 4 years. And after that, you're just making money. It is really satisfying to get a check from BG&E instead of the other way around. And that's it.
Awesome presentation. Do you have a few minutes for some questions?
Sure.
Okay. And ask some questions. And I'm sure anybody that's watching this may have questions as well. And I would encourage you to do two things. Number one is to reach out directly and then also be able to directly to Casey, and then also be able to put your questions into the chat of the YouTube video and put your comments there, and we'll make sure that Casey gets those. But So talk to me about this project. Are you working with a developer? Are you the developer? I
Oh, I'm
love.
not. No, we were. Lorex was hired by the developers to do the energy analysis. We also
Okay.
did some moisture analysis to make sure that we wouldn't have any problems with moisture formation on the insulation because we're experimenting with different ways of insulating, different strategies of insulating the walls and roof to get the most bang for our buck, and to
Mhm.
make sure that also that it would be, the water penetrations wouldn't be a problem. And so it was Schreiber Brothers who was the developer on this.
Got it. And when will these be available?
These bids have already been awarded, so this is in construction right now, and I
Okay.
believe these will be available soon then.
Oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, the aero barrier.
Mhm.
Um, I've heard of that being a well vetted solution for commercial properties, and now starting to hear about it for residential, both for new construction and for existing buildings in regards to really filling those gaps. Is this something that have you always been engaged with aero barrier? Was this a new solution that was referred to, or what's kind of your experience
For
with it?
this, it was a new solution. So the
Mhm.
house has been built for a few years now.
Yep.
But for us at the time, it was a new solution to take our knowledge of commercial buildings and apply it into this very residential space. But it worked out really well. It's a very easy to apply kind of product.
Hmm.
And for the kind of energy savings that you get, it is more expensive than a caulk gun, but it is still a really great investment.
Especially for a 120-year-old
Yeah. Yeah.
existing home for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I can go down to my basement right now and show you similar kind of pictures of these old, the old stone basements with cracks, and you can, see and hear and smell what's going on the other side from your neighbors. Like if you seal this up, it'll help out quite a bit.
Hmm. So the air filtration, so 6.4 air changes per hour basically means that's how much air is coming through the cracks and the crevices of the home. Yes?
Yeah, right. So you take that in the course of an hour, the entire volume of air in your house has changed over 6 times because of there's that much air going through.
Right. And so in a situation like out west in Pasadena, California, or maybe a couple of years ago when we had the Ottawa
The
fires and we
wildfires.
had
Yeah.
all the smoke, that's how, when we say that people spend 90% of their lifetimes indoors, and 70% of that time is spent at home, right, in your home, and which equates to about 14 to 16 hours per day. And most of that time is spent in the bedroom. You can see why the large percentage of the
Mhm.
outdoor air that we breathe, we actually breathe indoors. So the the particle matters and all that are outdoors, we're actually breathing them indoors because we spend so much time indoors. And in this particular situation, you're getting that in your home like six times per hour, which I think is amazing that you were able to, number one, identify and then get it down to zero point 0.4, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, real tight. Yep. So that's
Okay.
getting close to definitions for what's called passive house.
Passive house, right? I think what is passive house? 0.32, something like
It's down and around there.
that.
Yep.
Okay. All right, let's go to the next slide. Yeah, this one. So I love the fact that you're bringing in fresh air with
Mhm.
the
Yeah, when you get that tightness from the sealant, you want to make sure you still have enough fresh air to like offset
exactly.
any off gassing. So
Exactly.
you need to go in there. Yep.
So then have you guys calculated how many fresh air changes per hour you'll be getting?
We do. It's 100 CFM for the whole building, which is not a
Okay.
lot. It's really, we calculated it based off of offsetting the exhaust coming out of the bathrooms
Understood.
because
Okay.
that was
Okay.
that was the larger number. Yeah.
Understood. Any do you have a passive or active radon mitigation system, or yeah, how is that working with this?
There's a passive radon pipe.
Okay, okay, great, great. I love it. And there are people in the community, the legacy owners in this community in Sandtown and other places in Baltimore that might want to do some retrofits to their property. I want to add an ERV or HRV to my home here in Randallstown. Do you all consult homeowners on how to do these types of things?
We usually refer to to partners. So our
Okay.
company normally doesn't do a whole lot of residential work, but
Ah,
we're
okay.
happy to talk in terms of like community events. But in terms of hiring us, we would recommend you to some to other folks.
Understood. Understood. Okay. Let's see. Next slide. Okay. Are these all Energy Star rated appliances or no?
Yes, all
Okay.
Energy Star rated appliances.
Okay, great. And the hood fan above the stove vents outdoors, yes?
So there's no fan above that; it's recirculating.
Ah, okay,
Yeah.
okay. So it's a recirculating fan.
Yeah, it's a recirculating fan because it only needs with a filter, and it only needs to catch what burns in your pan. So there's no, as opposed to your stove at home, if it has an actual flame, you want to make sure that you're venting to outdoors because that might produce off gassing of CO2 or carbon monoxide or any kind of other uh, harmful things. But this all electric induction, there's the stove itself has no emissions, so it's just if you burn your chicken, you want to catch some of that and try to get it out of there. But otherwise, you don't really need to vent.
Okay, so the feeling the methodology here is that the fans in the bathrooms and the fresh air ventilation would take care of any particle matter that's generated from cooking, toasting bread, those types
Yeah.
of things that okay,
hmm
okay. I guess the question was about EV charging. Is it EV ready or is there an EV
Oh,
charger?
there's an EV charger out back. Yeah.
Okay, and will that be the same in Sandtown as well?
Sandtown doesn't have EV chargers,
Okay,
not that I know of.
okay, but they'll be net zero, but there won't be EV charging.
Right. But
Bat
the technology net, even just a couple of years that has progressed now,
mhm,
it will have exterior outlets that they can then plug a converter into and just charge up that way.
understood. Battery
Yep.
backup at either property, Barclay or Santo?
There's no battery backup right now.
Okay, but that could be added in the future
Yeah, absolutely.
if
And
one
certainly
wants
for an
to.
area where, like, for example, at this one, where you are the house is producing more electricity during
Hmm.
many months than it really needs.
Hmm.
And so to be able to instead of taking the whole year and saying, okay, that's net zero, some batteries would be able to store some of that energy during the day and then use it at night and then not have anything come in. So you're
Hmm.
starting to move closer and closer to being able to have off grid.
Hmm. And some of the I guess my final question is some of the tax incentives that were part of 45L and some other things that were
Mhm.
part of the Inflation Reduction Act that are now currently this week being maybe renegotiated, maybe clawed back. What do you if you could pull out your crystal ball, what are you seeing for the future in regards to some of these incentives that really prompted
Yeah,
a lot of these
yeah. We
retrofits?
I get asked this question kind of a lot. That is definitely worrisome, and I will say that a lot of these benefits, many of them, the biggest users of these benefits are people who own larger buildings, apartment complexes, for example, for 45L, and they tend to be wealthier. And so I'm expecting that they will be affected later than than other folks.
Understood. Understood. Okay. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want people to know about this? Would be one question, and I guess my second question is kind of what barriers to adoption are you finding? Like, why isn't every homeowner in Baltimore doing something like this?
Yeah, I would think. I think the one takeaway that really summarizes all this is that net zero, especially for a row home, is possible. And that specifically the economic challenges, the costs of building this start to work out much more in the favor of net zero when you look at it holistically. Because we're not just looking at, okay, you need to have this energy recovery unit and a higher efficiency HVAC. We're looking at that plus the solar plus these appliances. And when it all works together holistically, the numbers really start to work out a lot better. So that's where we're looking at it, not just as individual pieces. Look at the whole project and see
Yep.
how it is. And then I'm sorry, your second question was.
Well, it's just kind of barriers to adoption, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Why
Yeah.
isn't everyone doing this?
Yeah.
Um, there's certainly inertia there, and as much as the numbers do pencil out, it costs a little bit more to build. It makes it up on the back end, but it does cost a little bit
The first
more
costs
to
are
build.
kind of, yeah, the first cut, right?
And well, one of the things that we found too is that many contractors are downplay the benefits to some of these pieces of equipment because they have more callbacks on this. There's more moving parts on a heat pump than there is on a burner, and so there's more liability on their side. And so there's a lot of people that get dissuaded from putting this in by people who are not as familiar with the technology. It is something new that people have to learn, and so that's where we see some hesitation on building owners to go this route.
I have heard that mini splits uh, are pretty maintenance intense, but maybe those were ones in the past that were
Right.
and that they've
Yeah, I mean, mini
improved.
splits, you from an HVAC side, they're a little bit like air conditioners. They're just all over the place, and you have to
Hmm.
change the filter every once in a while.
Hmm.
It would be a handful of filters instead of one filter. That's kind of
Hmm.
the uptick on maintenance for those.
Hmm.
I think specifically for maintenance, what I'm talking about is heat pump water heaters instead of gas fired. Those have more maintenance. It's another HVAC piece of equipment essentially that you have to maintain as opposed to just a flame and a thermostat.
So do you hear from I do as a licensed practitioner, but do you hear from homeowners saying, "Hey, I want to buy one of these net zero homes. Like, where do I go to buy one?" Because I know in our multiple listing service, there is no button to press to search for net zero homes, not yet
Right.
anyways.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
frustrating that it's not there. I'd love to see that, and because I think that would put some pressure on the industry to say, hey, that there are people who are looking for this.
sure,
But yeah, yeah,
sure. Okay, great. No, this was great, Casey.
yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and your subject matter expertise, and appreciate it, man.
Happy to. Take
All
care.
right, have a great weekend.